And welcome to tonight's Sunday night sit down. We're very excited for the conversation that we're going to have this evening with a young man who looks to have a very bright political future. And that young man is Aerion Abney, who is the Democratic nominee for the State House in District 19. And he will also be running for the full term in the primary whenever it is scheduled. As of tonight, it is still undetermined when the actual campaign season will begin, when the state Supreme Court lifts its stay on candidates gathering petitions. So until candidates can start gathering petitions, the primary season is on hold. But due to the vacancies of Ed Gainey and Jake Wheatley, there will be special elections on April 5th here in the city of Pittsburgh. And we've been talking to several candidates who are running in the 24th legislative district. But tonight we have the opportunity to talk to one of the candidates who is running in the 19th legislative district, and that is Aerion Abney. Welcome to the Sunday night sit down.
Thank you, Khari. Appreciate you having me. Thank you to One Hood for allowing me to be participatory in this critical conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And, first starting off, what was it like being over, at the diner on the north side? Definitely one of the more historic committee votes in many, many years. Definitely shades of Tawanda Carlisle and Hop Kendrick about 15 years ago, where a similar, event happened, where actually they chose to go to the coin flip and didn't go to the drawing of a lot. So for those who aren't aware, Aerion and Reverend Grayson came to a tie, 55-55. So talk a little bit about that process and why you chose not to do the coin flip and went to the drawing of lots. But just kind of take us through what that whole process was like.
Absolutely. It was intense to say the least. It was, full of emotions up and down. Like literally they, as you mentioned, we had a tie. And so they did a recount, I believe, 2 separate times. And every time they would do the recount, you could hear a pin drop on the floor. It was that quiet. And so it was definitely an emotional experience. A lot of, folks were there that evening, both in support of both candidates. And I think it proved itself because it was 55-55. And so, we ended up not doing the coin flip. I think that was just a knee-jerk reaction when they did the second recount, and they said, well, do you want to do a coin flip? And both of us said, that didn't necessarily feel right to like decide it just that easily. And so they ended up having to call the state Democratic committee folk and the solicitor, the lawyer for there. And they ended up going in the back room, having a conversation. They came out about 5 minutes later and said, they talked to the lawyer, and the lawyer said we had to follow the rules that the state party would use if there was a tie for the endorsement, and that's picking the lots. And so because we were in a restaurant, the restaurant owner went into the back and found a tub of old margarine and a clean tub of margarine and brought it out. They wrote both our names on there, and there was a dramatic pause after the name got pulled out, and they read my name, and so we were able to break the tie. And we were just super excited to have the opportunity to have the nomination from the Democratic Committee. That gives us a lot of great momentum, obviously going into the special election on April 5th, but also going forward for the primary as well. And so we're grateful, but we are not resting on our laurels. We understand there's a lot of work to do still going forward with this campaign. Getting the nomination was hard work, but I would argue that the real hard work starts now as we are the nominee and the presumptive individual to be the next state representative for the 19th Legislative District, starting in April through the end of this year.
And what unique qualities do you feel that you bring to this race?
Yeah, I think I bring my energy, my youthfulness, as well as my determination. Many people know that being a state representative is a full-time job, um, and it requires a lot of travel back and forth to Harrisburg, being present in Harrisburg every week, but also being present here in the district, in the community. But then, also when I look at this, I think about the fact that my persistence, I think, has paid off even in the committee endorsement process, because for me, this is not fly-by-night politics. I didn't just get involved in this overnight. I've actually run for this seat multiple times, so I have been engaged in the community, been engaged in the different neighborhoods. There isn't really a neighborhood within the 19th Legislative District where you won't find community leaders and individuals and churches and nonprofits and for-profit businesses that can attest to the work that I've put in over the years, not on the political front, but even as my time when I worked as a legislative assistant for this district and doing constituent services, to my time when I worked in the foundation community, when I was a program officer giving out grant nonprofit organizations all across the district in Allegheny County, to the work that I'm doing right now in the voting rights and election administration work. I've always been a person who's been entrenched and involved in trying to use whatever lead in whatever seat that I'm in, or whatever position that I am, to try to change the realities of struggle. And I just see this as a continuation of doing that as the next state representative.
And you mentioned, you've run in the past. What did you learn in those past efforts that can, help, guide you through this current effort that's happening now?
I would say one of the biggest things is you really have to press the flesh with folks. I mean, I know that's a traditional political term, but it's really getting out into the community, knocking on doors, talking to folks about their issues, and telling them how you feel like from this position you'll be able to resolve them. Because that's what people want to vote for. They want to vote for somebody that they believe is going to listen to them, is going to be open and receptive to hearing what really ailing them, and figuring out how, from a policy perspective or from a legislative perspective, that you can bring resources back to try to address those issues. And so for me, the biggest thing was engaging with people. I always felt like if I could engage with every individual that I knew was going to cast a ballot on that election day, that I would feel like I would be in a good position, because it's all about listening and understanding and taking that information and turning it into action to resolve the issues that people really care about. So that's one of the biggest things, is you have to talk to people. You can't enter into this politics and just show up into these communities 4 months before an election and expect people to give you their vote, because they're going to see that as disrespectful. They want to know that you've been in this community, not just in the political season, and they want to know that you actually care enough to focus on the issues that they really want to focus on, because you've asked them and you've talked to them and you listen to them and you understand them.
And you mentioned your work, particularly the work that you're doing now, and focusing on voter engagement, voting rights, election reforms in a progressive sense. What, from that experience of the work that you're doing now, will you bring with you, and what do you think from those experiences doing voting rights work will serve you as a state representative?
Yeah, I think the benefit that I've gained so far from my experience in the voting rights space is the importance of grassroots and grass tops advocacy, because understanding that elected officials really are responsive to the constituents and the voters in which they represent. And so when you're able to organize and agitate and educate voters about decisions that are happening from elected officials that are impacting their everyday quality of life, specifically in this example about their ability to be able to cast a ballot safely and securely, their ability to have things like drop boxes potentially, or being able to vote early, or educating them about their right to be able to vote by mail now. Like educating folks around that, getting them excited about those issues, and empowering them to be advocates on their behalf and advocating directly to the elected officials that are and elections officials that are making those decisions, I think is super powerful. So me as a legislator, I want to be able to continue to develop that relationship with the advocacy community and say, hey, I understand. I've been in that space, and I want to continue to understand the issues that you are fighting for, so that I can go to Harrisburg and I can be a champion and an advocate on your behalf. And so that's the biggest thing is there's no such thing as a one person army, not successfully. Being a state representative, it's great. It gives you a lot of influence and a lot of ability to make sense. But my ability to be effective as a state representative is really as effective as my conversations and understanding about what advocates want, what community residents want, so that I can actually go to Harrisburg and resolve those issues. So I will continue to develop those relationships and come from understanding that they are fighting for what they deserve, and it's my responsibility and job to get them that.
And thank you. And just staying, on the topic of voting rights and election reform, before we go on to some other issues, there's current attempts in the state legislature to overturn Act 77. Current attempts to make it harder to vote, in the Commonwealth after the historic passing of, Act 77. As a potential state lawmaker in the very near future, how concerned are you, about these current efforts to make it more difficult to vote in the state of Pennsylvania and to strip away some of the access points that Act 77 created?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think in the short term future, the immediate future, I'm not as concerned from them legislating policy to do that, because we have a backstop and a governor who has expressed no desire to take away or to roll back people's ability to be able to access the ballot. But one of the two concerns that I have more so is that because the legislator understands that there is the governor as the backstop to prevent them from doing these deeds, they have now begun conversations and discussions on ways that they can circumvent the governor having any impact on that. And that's by taking these efforts to a ballot initiative, right? And so they have done a really good job, the Republican Party, at controlling the narrative about voting and things of that nature. And so now they're trying to take it to the court of public opinion and try to take some of these things like voter ID potentially and other things to change the Constitution and to do a ballot initiative to implement some of these things that they're trying to do, because they know that they're never going to get the governor to sign off on it. So that's something that we are concerned about. But in the advocacy space, the voting rights space, we are well aware of this, and we are developing our plans of action to push back on that, so that doesn't happen. And then also, we have a very important gubernatorial race coming up this cycle for the primary and for the general election, and we need to do everything that we can to support a Democratic governor, Josh Shapiro, to continue to be in that governor seat, to be a backstop against some of these efforts.
I think, and just switching gears from voting rights to some other issues, can you talk about some of the other issues that you feel are top priority to be addressed in the 19th legislative district?
Absolutely. So when I look at the district, I look at things like housing justice and housing affordability, and understanding and realizing that the experiences that I think matter the most as I'm talking to folks and as I'm running this campaign are really the experiences of the folks who feel like they've been left out and left behind in this new Pittsburgh, right? The folks that feel like we are living in a Pittsburgh where half the people are living like the Jetsons and the other half are living like the Flintstones. And a lot of the times, the people who look like me and you are the ones that are living like the Flintstones because of lack of access to opportunities, and particularly access to affordable quality housing and having housing justice. And so, for me, with this campaign, I understand that our region and our city is going through this renaissance of new development, and I'm all supportive of development in our communities. I think that's a natural progressive um, thing that happens in communities. But I think that we need to figure out how to have responsible development and development without displacement. One of the biggest things that I'm concerned about is, ethnically cleansing our communities through the means of economics, because folks who, even if they are homeowners and development is happening at a rapid pace, that if your income doesn't increase, your taxes on your properties does. And if you can't keep up with those taxes on your properties, on your property, what does that mean for your ability to be able to stay in the neighborhood that you want to be able to stay in? As well as if you aren't a homeowner and you're a renter, and your rent increases 2, 3, 4, $500, and your income doesn't increase, what does that mean for your ability to stay in your neighborhood? And if you are a renter and you want to be a homeowner, what type of programs and opportunities are available for you to be a first-time homeowner? I want to be able to support those type of efforts. And then, also looking at things like access to jobs, good paying quality jobs. We know that there is a lot of federal money that's coming into the state when it happens to do revolving around infrastructure. And so how do we connect folks who are in our communities to the job opportunities that will be coming from those millions of dollars that will be flowing into our city, in our region? And I want to be an advocate as a state representative to connect folks to those job opportunities that will be available, and those entrepreneurs and those small businesses who already have entities and businesses in place to get access to the contracts and those opportunities to be able to build in their capacity and their bandwidth and their bonding capacity to hire folks from within the community. So, housing is a big thing, access to jobs, and also quality education, making sure that we have a fair funding formula so that students, no matter where their zip code is, have quality access to education going forward.
Yeah, and staying on that topic, obviously gentrification, as you mentioned, continues to be a huge issue in the city, and particularly in the 19th legislative district. And you mentioned housing. What are some of the things you think you can do at the state level to help address the gentrification and some of the other dynamics that are that are creating a lot of anxiety, and, as you said, actually truly displacing people outside of the city? What are things that you think that can be done besides some of the things that you talked about earlier to specifically deal with gentrification in the 19th district?
Yeah, so I want to be able to promote pragmatic policies around this that can be implemented into our planning and our programming, right? So I support things like one-for-one replacement, housing replacement. So if you are a developer and you are have the rights to develop on certain property, but you're tearing down an old unit where folks live, and it's 100 people live in that property, that if you're tearing down 100 units of affordable housing, that you're replacing it with 100 units of affordable housing. You're not replacing it with 25 units of affordable housing and 75 units of market rate housing, right? It's one for one replacement. And then also looking at ways that we can, incentivize folks to be able to keep up with their taxes as they increase. So looking for ways that we can expand tax abatements, particularly for our seniors who are on fixed income, who oftentimes find themselves, pulling the shortest straw, where their fixed income doesn't allow them to keep up with their taxes on their home that probably has been in their family for generations, and then they end up having to lose that. And then also looking at, where are there opportunities where we can push for different educational programs that come into our communities to educate folks about the process of being a first-time homeowner. Me being a first homeowner myself, I didn't fully understand the process until I went through a program to understand how to get my credit right. I had to be able to have a down payment, but also that there are government programs that can help you offset those costs for down payments. And then, working with the Penn Finance and Housing Authority to be able to approve grants and funding and resources to developers that we feel are responsible developers that will come into communities to talk to folks to understand what they want to see, and will abide by the different master plans and things of that nature that communities have developed, and then be able to do a collaborative effort with the city. The city has a really large role in this, city council and the mayor's office, to make sure that we are aligned on a lot of these efforts.
And one more question, just along this theme of regional equity or regional inequity, and we know that many of these challenges don't adhere to borders, they don't adhere to municipal borders, they don't adhere to legislative borders either. What do you see your role as a state lawmaker to not only address specific issues like gentrification, but kind of the broader issue of inequity in the Pittsburgh region?
Yeah, so this is years and years of systemic inequity that has been going on, before I was even born, and a lot of it is sort of sometimes unintended consequences and and sometimes poor decisions that have happened from our government institutions that have taken away access to opportunities for folks. And so the fact that our government has played a role in a lot of these inequities, I think it is a responsibility of the government to try to right some of these wrongs that have happened. And so for me, as a legislator, like I said, I want to be able to make sure that when we are looking at how we are spreading out our resources to communities, that we are making sure that we are investing in the neighborhoods and the communities that have had the least amount of investment over the past amount of decades. I want to make sure that we are supporting our minority and women-owned and veteran-owned businesses to ensure that they have the resources from the state to be able to get contracts, to be able to build their capacity, to be able to hire locally within the community. But then also when I think about, in my previous work, I worked in the foundation community, and being able to leverage those relationships with other program officers and presidents of the local foundations to figure out how can we really take those philanthropic dollars and put them to good use to sort of deal with some of the inequality that has happened in the Pittsburgh region for decades now. And so those are some of the things I want to be able to do as a legislator. I want to be able to also figure out ways that we can provide opportunities for folks to be able to sit on different boards and commissions that are making decisions about people's everyday quality of life, that many folks aren't really aware of these boards and commissions and who are sitting on these boards and commissions that are making these decisions. How can we get proper representation to be on there so that we know that when certain issues pop up, that we have representatives from a diverse background and group that have been impacted by these decisions that can sit at these tables, can sit at these meetings, and really be an advocate for their communities.
Yeah, and switching gears just a little bit before we close out in our last few minutes, one of the questions that I'm always, interested in hearing about is like, how do you see yourself balancing, the sense of urgency, with the voters? There's always big expectations. When a new leader comes into position, how will you, balance, voters and constituents, a sense of urgency and wanting to get certain things done, and understanding that the legislative process is also oftentimes a very glacial process.
Yeah, that's a great way to frame it. I mean, it's the legislative process. It was not designed to necessarily work very quickly. That's why they set up checks and balances in the legislative process. But what I will say is that the where how we've gotten to where we are right now over these decades is not going to be resolved by government alone. It's going to take a collaborative effort, right? We need to have developed plans from multiple different institutions, right? So not just our government having a plan, but our government working well with our educational institutions, our government working well with our faith-based institutions, our business institutions, our philanthropic institutions, our nonprofit institutions. Like all of these different institutions, I think have a role to play in resolving these issues. And some of them can work and move a little bit quicker than others. But as long as we are aligned and we're similar in our vision, and how we can improve the quality of life for folks, I think that's the best way that we can try to approach this. It's from a multifaceted approach. It's not just going to take one entity, and especially not the government, to resolve our issues. If we're waiting for government to solve all of our problems, we're probably going to be waiting a long time, and that's just the sad reality, because that's the way that it's designed. But I also think that the role of government is to do things well collectively that we aren't able to do well individually. So that's things like, fixing our bridges. That's things like infrastructure. That's things like fixing potholes or shoveling our snow, or making sure that we provide good quality public education, or we're providing grants to organizations to build their capacity. There's definitely a role to play in this bigger ecosystem of solving our society's problems that government has, but it's only going to be as successful as its ability to collaborate with these other institutions who also have a role to play in this as well.
I was on mute for a second. How can
Cool.
those who are interested in learning more about your campaign, want to get involved in your campaign potentially, how can they get in contact with you and find out more about your campaign?
Absolutely. They can always check us out on our website. It's voteaerionabney.com. We are on all the major social media platforms. On Facebook, it's Aerion Andrew Abney. Same thing on Twitter, Aerion Andrew Abney. You can find me, and on Instagram, you can find me at Aerion Andrew Abney as well. So we encourage folks, if you want to, join our movement and get involved in the work that we're doing, trying to usher in a new space of opportunities for folks and trying to change the realities of struggle for people. Come join our movement, sign up, be a volunteer, make a donation to the campaign. We would love to have you.
Yeah, thanks so much for that information. And one quick thing before I ask our final question for the evening, just a quick kind of housekeeping thing. One thing we try to do is make sure folks are really informed, about the process and the way this process is working with the vacancy created by Jake Wheatley's transition over to the mayor's office. So there's a special election on April 5th, and as of this evening, it appears, are you the only candidate on the ballot for the April 5th special election?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. So unless there's barring some unforeseen circumstance, you are the only candidate on the ballot and should prevail on April 5th, and then there will be a primary at some date yet to be determined that was supposed to be May 17th, right, but because of the state. So I just wanted to be clear for the voters out there, particularly in the 19th district, that, so for the special election, you are at this point running unopposed as a Democratic nominee, but will face opposition more than likely in the primary for the full term.
That's correct.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure folks were, aware of that, of kind of, there'll be two elections in some very short period of time, potentially April 5th and May 17th, but definitely April 5th and maybe some date yet to be determined by the state Supreme Court. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. Really enjoyed the conversation. And before we leave, we always have one final question that Miracle, came up with. about a year ago as we were doing these sessions, and it's what brings you joy.
Yeah, I love that question. My family. I mean, that's an easy one for me. My wife Tamara, my son Arius, and my other son Amari, who's 2, and Amari is 5 months old. They are the light of my life, and they definitely bring me joy every day.
Well, congratulations on the nomination, and congratulations on the
Thank you.
newborn, and best of luck. I'm headed to April 5th and beyond. Again, Aerion Abney, Democratic nominee for the 19th Legislative District, and also a Democratic candidate for the full term in this year's primary election, which is supposed to be held on May 17th, but may be delayed due to legal challenges with the redistricting. So thank you so much for joining the Sunday Night Sit Down, and best of luck. And we hope to hear from you soon
Thank
again.
you.
And again, that was Aerion Abney, candidate and Democratic nominee for the 19th district in the special election on April 5th. And he's also a candidate for the primary election in the 19th district that will be held sometime this spring, either May 17th or a later date, to be determined by the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. So thank you so much again for joining us tonight on the Sunday Night Sit Down. Tune in tomorrow at 7 p.m. for our monthly legislative forum. We will be looking into the current probation bill that's moving through the state legislature, and talk about some of the things that are very troubling about that piece of legislation. So join us tomorrow night at 7 p.m. For the One Hood Power Hour special legislative session. And until then, have a great Sunday evening and a wonderful Monday morning. We'll see you back here tomorrow night at 7 p.m. for the One Hood Power Hour. For the whole team at One Hood Power and One Hood Media, this is Khari Mosley signing off, and take care. Have a wonderful night.